So for the stick animation, this one's going to be due on February 4th. And the idea with this one is we're getting into a bit fancier animations, not just the static setting a key here, setting a key there. I really want to work on getting something that looks like more natural fluid motion, okay? And we're using this stick rig, which I'm going to show you how it works in a minute, okay? So understanding the basic mechanical animation using stick rigs. Like every assignment we have, we will be staying organized with our stuff, setting keyframes. We'll be adjusting our speed and spacing using the dope sheet and the graph editor. In the past one, we really focused on just using the dope sheet with not a lot of graph editor stuff. This one will start introducing more of the graph editor, but not like a crazy amount. The main item we'll be doing is animating the stick wagging and making it feel like it has properties to it. It's not just an animation. It's not just something moving. It actually feels like a stiff object or a loose object, and it just kind of wiggles back and forth. I'm using appropriate materials, lights, and camera, and then using motion blur as well. The assignment we're currently working on will not have motion blur attached to it just because of how it's created. Motion blur will not work nicely. It'll actually like freak out, and parts of the house will actually like disappear in frames if we try to use motion blur. Okay. If I go too fast, remember I print these up and they're in the book, so we can always copy them later too. For this one, we'll be doing thumbnails. So I'll show you what I want for thumbnails. And then for our turn-in, it'll be your project folder with everything except for your rendered images. So when you render stuff out, we get a bunch of images just like you had in the intro class. I don't want all the images. All I want is that end movie. And that movie is typically going to be about 5 to 7 seconds of animation, 960 by 540 at 30 frames a second. Our class is 2540 3D animation, and we have 6 points possible. Okay, so I'll print that. We'll have it in the back in the binder. Cool. All right. So let's look at what this is. So on Canvas, last class I went over, here's how we animate that Game of Thrones, setting keyframes, moving keyframes, setting up our timing, how to add some basic materials, how to add a light into the scene. I didn't go through the rendering part. Over the weekend, I went through and I made a video specifically. Here's what the lights do in Arnold. Here's what materials are in Arnold. Here's what how you render out of Arnold, and here's how you put it in After Effects and make a movie. So all of those will be right here. So any assignment that I show up here, I'm not going to go deep into here's how we do lighting and materials and all that. I'm more going to focus on the animation because in this is where all of that stuff is. Oops. So here is, if I scroll down, here is the Arnold lighting. And then you scroll down further, and then here's the materials, and you scroll down further, and then there it is. This is rendering from Maya, and then the final one is putting it all together into After Effects. Okay, so those 4 videos there will be typically everything you need to do for each assignment: lighting, materials, rendering it, and then making a movie in After Effects. Okay, so I'm not going to go through those up here because they're right there. By the time you are done with your Game of Thrones one, this is about what you should have here is a rendering of your scene. Okay, and that's Mike's. And then if I go to the next one, there's Austin's. And he obviously had 2 different cameras there. So he has this camera, and then he cut to a different camera showing that coming out. This one's Jasmine's, and you can see she has a background image here. So your images, when you render them out, even though you have a sky or an HDR or whatever, if you turn that off, it'll actually come into After Effects without that background in there. And you can tell it, do show the background or don't. And then you can replace it with your own. If you do replace it with a background image of your own, I showed this one because I want you to see how grainy and like pixelated it is, how like it's kind of like eh. Find something that has a high enough quality or simply use a gradient. Here's a nice gradient, just blending from one color to the next. It works pretty good, okay? So by the time you're done, you'll have this movie already set up. And your turn-in for this is just the movie. That's all I really need is just that movie. Um, cool. Questions on turning that one in? Where do we turn it in? Someone asked? No? Yes. On the Z drive, there's a 2540 folder. Turn in Game of Thrones. So you just drop it into that folder. All right. Now for the stick one, that's on Canvas 2. Here's the stick rig. You're going to download that. You'll make a new project. Every assignment we do, we either are getting a project folder that we're starting off of, or we are using, making a new one. So I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to call it my last name underscore stick animation. I put it in the correct folder. There, and then I hit accept. I'm also going to turn off, I don't like that autosave. So I'm going to turn off that autosave. Okay, so I downloaded my file. So I'm going to go to my downloads. There's a stick rig file. And I'm just going to move it into my folder that I just set up. Stick animation, drop it into scenes. There we go. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so this is what the file looks like. The idea with this is you want to animate it twice. The first time, just getting used to the controls, just getting used to how this thing moves, how to make it work. The second time is the one you're going to turn in, which is going to be you telling a little story with your stick rig. Not just moving left and right, but actually like doing something else, okay? So in this case, zoom in here. You'll see that I have this arrow at the top, and then I have these lines right here. I cannot grab any of the geometry right there because I have it all locked on this layer. Okay, so it's all locked. I can't grab that. These controls that are right here, that's all the controls. Those are the things I can grab. So based off of what I have here and what this looks like, what kind of movement do you think I'm able to do on this controller? Like move it up and down? Do you think I can scale it? Side to side, right? So it's just left and right. You'll see that scaling is locked, rotation is locked. I can just move this left and right. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I can't move it up and down or front to back. It doesn't move that way. It's locked in. These things here, what kind of movement do they have? Yep, rotation, right? And just that direction. I can't rotate it this way. I can't rotate it that way, just in this one direction. Okay. Now, as you create rigs for your stuff, typically you want to look at how is something supposed to move and limit it so that the animator can't move it in a different direction. So on this one, if I were to look at this pipe here, that pipe indicates that it should only rotate side to side. It shouldn't rotate front to back. It's possible to rotate it around, I guess, but there's not really a control there for why that would work. Okay. So this one only rotates like that. Now there's one of these rotation things for each one of these areas. So if I go here, and then here, and then here, and then there, and then there, and then I rotate it, you can see how I can rotate each one of these kind of like at the same time. Okay. If I do them manually, individually, I grab one. Oops, come on. Then I grab the next one. Then I can grab the next one. Then I can grab the next one. And then I can grab that last one. Okay. Or I can do them all the same or all at the same time, which is what I just did. All right. So as you animate anything, we have to consider what is the driving force, like what is controlling this item, okay? When we're walking, what is the driving force of us moving forward? Is it our legs moving? Yes, no, maybe? Is it a trick question? It's our hips. Our hips are forward and our legs are basically just catching us. That's all they're doing. Our legs help us move, obviously, but our hips are forward, our body is forward, so we're actually like basically falling forward, and our legs are just catching us and making sure that we don't fall. Okay, so think of this platform here. What is the driving force of this platform? What's going to be the controlling thing here? Yeah, the plank or the platform on top. Yep. So that's what's going to be controlling it. So whenever I animate, typically you want to animate these things first because this is what's controlling it. So it makes sense for me to get the timing down of that specific item first. We can also notice over here in the channel box, there's only one item listed. So there's no rotations or scales or any of that. So when I hit S, I'm only going to set keys for that, regardless of what I have selected in there. Okay. So I'm going to animate this just moving to this little locator here. And that's the purpose of it, is just so you can get used to animating it to a spot and then coming back. So the first thing I do is I animate the start. I want it to start here. So I'm going to start my keyframes there. I'm going to go up to, let's say 30, let's say 40. And then I'm going to animate it going over to that spot, roughly that spot. Okay. So now I rewind it, I hit play. Great. How was that movement? Stiff, right? It's pretty boring looking. What's one thing we could do to add some fanciness to this? These here? Yep, not yet though. We still want to get just that main thing done first. So if we don't have the top done, we don't want to touch the bottom yet. So as it's moving, is it moving all at the same rate? Is it easing in and easing out? What is it doing? Like, is it slowing down at the end and slowing down and being slow at the start of how it starts? Or is it all going at the same exact speed? That's what I think too. Let's verify it. So I'm going to go in the graph editor. The graph editor will tell us right away. Right here, wherever this is flat, it's speeding up, right? It's gradually getting faster. And then it's going its regular speed, and then at the end, it's gradually slowing down again, okay? So now we have to decide what kind of movement do we want on this thing. Do we want it to go fast at the start of this and then slow down at the end, or do we want it to go slow at the beginning and then fast at the end? We can't have both, okay? We can't have it be fast at the end and the start because that would look weird, okay? So let's say that I wanted it to be fast at the end. So I'm going to grab the end handlebar. Now am I going to move it up or down? Am I going to move it this way or that way? Down, right? That way it's so super slow and then it speeds up right at the end. So I'll rewind, we'll hit play. It's a bit faster, okay? It definitely is a bit faster, but it's still too slow. Remember, we have two spots we can edit keyframes. So I'm going to go into the dope sheet, and I'm just going to move this keyframe closer. So I can play in the graph editor all day, but it literally is the keyframes just have to be closer together to really get that speed. I want it to like smack into that wall. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to scoot this back. Come on. Maybe to like 20 or so, about there. I'll go in the graph editor, make sure I didn't screw anything up here. Yep, I just need to push that down a little bit. Now let's take a look. There we go. So now it feels like a bit more speed of how it's like slamming into that side. Whack. Okay. So now that the top is done, now what's the next thing that I need to worry about? You said it, Brendan. Yep, making it swing. Okay. So which item is this specifically affecting? Like this only affects one of these. Which one? The top one, right? And then which one does the top one affect? The next one down, and then that one affects that one, and then that one affects that one, and so on. So they kind of like daisy chain. So think of this in a physics sense. There's energy that's being transferred in the top, and then gradually it transfers through all of those pieces. So I'm going to grab all of these pieces here. I'm going to set a keyframe, and again, it's locked to just what they can rotate. And then I'm going to go to the end here. Okay, so that's where it hits. So which way should these be rotating? That way or that way? This way? Okay. Let's set a key there. All right, so now what happens? Yep, it should swing the other way. So let's go to, let's say, 25. We'll swing it the other way. Cool. Now what should it do? Yep. So one thing we have to consider is that it's never going to swing past where it already swung, right? So if it swings 50 degrees this way, it's not going to swing 55 degrees the other way or 60 degrees the other way. It's only going to go, let's say, 50 degrees, 40 degrees, 20, 10, whatever. So gradually these numbers should be less and less. Gradually it should be um, rotating or swaying um, a little bit at a time. So now we'll take a look at it and see. There we go. And watch that again. All right, I'm going to shrink my work area here just so we can focus on just that area. Okay, how does that look? Better? Worse? Better. All right, so now let's see what else we can do to this. Let's look at the graph editor and just analyze what it's doing because we want to verify that it's doing what it should be doing, okay? So if I grab this keyframe and I look at this, that's how far, how many degrees it's going in there. Ignore the negative for a minute. Just look at the 22.5. When I grab this one, it's going 21.9, okay? So we round those off. They're both going to about 22. So maybe this one shouldn't go that far. Maybe it should go to, let's say, 15. And then this one here, maybe that one will go to negative 10. And this one's less, and then that one's less, but it's not even going the opposite side. That side. And then that one. Okay, so let's watch it again. So that feels better. Okay, now I can also look at these and maybe tweak some of this. So, um, so as this thing comes in and hits, I'm basically saying once you hit here, you should be flopped over to the other side. But from this point to that point, there really is no like big movement. It basically just kind of like gets to that point and then swings over. It'd be nice if we had some maybe like gradual like higher up movement or a little bit quicker movement as it gets to this. Remember that this main platform is like picking up speed. It's like going super slow and then it's like going fast. But way back here at the beginning, it's barely moved, but look how far it's come off the ground. Okay, so maybe I need to go to my dope sheet, grab those starting keyframes, and just scoot it down a bit. There you go. So now we get very little movement or nothing, and then it picks up once the platform starts moving a bit quicker. Okay, now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to have this hang out for a second. So I'm just going to set a keyframe on this so it stays there. And then I'm going to have it zip off the screen. There it is. Where'd you go? All right, let's look at the graph editor and see what happened with that. Yep. So what it did here was it gets to that keyframe, basically like shoots past the keyframe and then comes back to it. So I'm going to grab this and just make that flat. And that'll basically just say, stay there, don't do anything until you get to this point. And then we're going to make that part linear. Actually, we'll leave that part flat. We'll make this part linear. Let's see what that looks like. So it hits, wiggles, and then goes off the screen. Cool. Okay. So now let's go and grab these ones and do the same thing. So grab all these, and you can see how we need to tie these movements together. If the movement from these is not tied to the movement of that, it's going to look very fake. So I need to go to where this starts moving, start animating it, and then go to the end of the movement and just rotate it, let's say up like that. Now, I'm not going to do the wiggle on this side because I don't see it. Okay, if this was my animation, it starts here, and then it just goes off screen. Okay, so I don't see the wiggling, so there's no point in putting the wiggle on that side. Cool. All right, so now let's look at this again and see, okay, this is looking pretty good, but we can still make it look a bit better. So anytime we do animation, having things make sense as far as the physics goes should be included in that, okay? So if a ball is falling down, it should gradually pick up speed as it's falling, and then when it hits the ground, it should like squash and then bounce back up. Same thing here. So we already said that this was the main item that moves, right? This platform on top. So in order for this platform on top to move, it does its thing, and then it's transferring some of its energy to this one, and then it's transferring its energy to that one, it's transferring its energy to that one, that one, that one. So does this happen all at the same time, or does it happen like gradually? Like the top thing moves, and that causes the second one, and then when that one moves, and it causes the next one? Or is it all at the exact same time? What was that? Gradual. Okay, so each item basically is making the other one move. So what we should do is instead of all of these keyframes being perfectly lined up to this, they all should be offset a bit. Like the first one should move, then the second one, then the third one, and so on. So here's what it looks like now. Okay. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to offset each one of these. So I'm going to grab them in the order I want to offset them. I'm going to go to the dope sheet. And you'll see they're in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 should happen first. 2 should happen next. So I'm going to go and just offset the keyframes by 1. Okay, so I just literally just move the keyframes over 1. I'm going to go to 3, offset that one. Go to 4, offset that one. Go to 5, offset that one. So now each one of these is going to be offset by 1 frame. Now let's take a look and see what that looks like. You can see lots of keyframes down here now. And it feels a lot more organic. It feels a lot more wiggly. It feels like we can see the motion like transferring from one to the other to the other. Okay, it feels much more realistic looking. Okay, maybe even on that first one, oops, wrong one. On that first one, maybe I need to grab all these and just scoot them over 1, just so that it's not synced up with even that top platform. Nope, it was better where it was before. Put that back. Cool. All right, now the other thing that we can look at is maybe they all shouldn't be moving and rotating the same amount. If the first one rotates this far down, maybe the next one wouldn't rotate as far. Okay, if the first one rotates -22, the next one might rotate -20, and the one after that -15, and the one after that whatever. Okay, so what I'm going to do is grab all of these and just offset the rotation so they're slightly different. Okay, so I'm going to start here, and because they're already offset, this one should be the highest one, or the furthest one down, and then this one, and then that one, and then that one, and then that one. Okay, I'll do the same thing up here. And then I'll do the same thing here. First one stays, and then the rest of them are just kind of offset. Oops, that's too much. There you go. Now that should be a bit more realistic in how it's moving, because they're all not moving at the same exact rate. Let's see that again. I think I need to scoot it back just 1 frame. Let me go to my dope sheet here. Just scoot everything back 1 frame, maybe 2 frames. There we go. That feels better. Sometimes you literally just have to scoot your frames 1 or 2 over and get better results, just because it doesn't feel like the things are synced up. Okay, so that feels a lot more realistic again because we've kind of looked at how this thing physically would move in the real world. The top thing is going to move, and then that's going to make the second thing, and the third thing, and the fourth thing, and the fifth thing move. Okay, so this is going to be the first one you're going to do is just this kind of animation, just understanding here's how this thing is going to move. Here's how I'm able to animate it and then offset my keyframes and then do that. And then the next part of this is you're going to just, I'm going to save this as Sarcona stick rig first attempt. Then I'm going to open up my second one. So I'm going to reopen that original file. And now in this one, I'm going to reanimate it, but I'm going to do it that tells a little story about what's happening to this. So maybe it rotates or scale, or not scales, but it rotates around, it does something different. Maybe I have it falling down or hitting something or whatever. Animation. So here's one of the other students' stick animations. So you see he added a platform, he added this ball, and he has it slam into it, and then it does the same thing. It comes to rest. Bouncing ball action. Here's another one. Okay, so he added this in the background, and then he has this as the stick animation. Boom. So he goes to hit it. If you get the Peanuts reference, he's going to kick the ball, but then he pulls it out of its way, and then that guy falls. Okay, so once you've done the first pass, now it's time to start unlocking stuff, and then you can play with it a bit more fancier. Okay, so in that case, let's say in this case, I do want to rotate this whole thing around. It's missing from here. So I'm going to go to my general editors. I'm going to go to my channel controls, somewhere in there. And this is where things can get locked and hidden, and that's what's happened. These are locked and hidden. So here's non-keyable hidden. I'm going to go find rotate. There it is. And I think I only need to rotate it in the Z direction. That's that. And then I want to translate it in the Y direction also. So I'll find translate Y. And then I'm going to go to locked and make sure that the rotate Z and translate Y are unlocked. Okay, so now I have the ability to rotate it this way and the ability to rotate or move it, sorry, up and down. Okay, so now before I do any animation, I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So on your storyboard sheets, those things that are on the top right there, you're just going to go through and start to lay out like what you want to happen, how you want to animate stuff. And this will just give you a good indicator as to how this thing is set up. Okay, so you'll do these on paper. I'm doing them on here so you can see it. So here's the stick. So there's, let's say, frame 1. And then we'll have this. And then I'm going to have it, let's say, go and land on the ground. So there's my ground here. So I'm going to put the ground there, and I'm going to have the stick kind of like collapsed on itself. And I'm saying frame 2, frame 1, but they won't actually be frame 1 and 2. My timing will actually happen in the software. And then I'm going to have it jump up, so now it's going to be like this. Straight like that. Now you're frame 3. And then I'm going to have it do like a little flip, so it's going to be like this. And that'll be frame 4. Okay? So before you do any animation of it afterwards, you want to get into the on the paper and just start sketching out. This is what I want to happen. I want it to go from here to this pose to that pose. Once you have it, then you jump back into Maya, and then you can start animating it, start setting up those poses. If this is my first frame, there it is. If I have another frame, I would go in here and I would squish this down. I'd rotate this one that way, rotate this one that way, rotate this one that way, rotate that one this one that way. Right, a little bit more rotation there to get this to actually fold like I wanted it to. There we go. So there would be my second frame. I would set my keyframes. Then I would go up again, set it where my next one is, go up again, set it where my next one is. Then I play with the graph editor, play with the dope sheet, get the animation to be synced up, okay? Everyone's animation is going to be different. So you have to go through and obviously plan out what you want to happen and then get into Maya and make it happen. Questions on that yet?